You saw and heard the question. Story 1. Simplified estate planning. If you die without a will, half of your estate goes to your wife. The rest is divided among your children. A person who is not a family member can visit you in the hospital and make medical decisions on your behalf if you are unable to do so. Social Security benefits. If you are a man who does not contribute to Social Security income or contributes less than 50% of the maximum, you can collect from your spouse's Social Security income after a divorce, provided you were married for at least 10 years. If you are involved in a criminal enterprise, you can operate openly in front of your wife, as she cannot be compelled to testify against you. Story 2. Telling a person of authority that you are waiting for your wife holds more weight than saying you are waiting for your girlfriend. Even after being divorced for years, I still tell people I am waiting on my wife. Story 3. Taxes, inheritance, and medical power of attorney if you are incapacitated. The latter can be arranged with an advance directive, but joint taxes are strictly regulated. Story 4. End-of-life decisions and estate planning. Ideally, you are married to a woman you trust. If a significant health care or end-of-life decision needs to be made on your behalf, your wife has the authority to do so. For example, my fiancé knows I want to be cremated. If I die, I want my assets to go to her. We will create a plan so all our children, from previous relationships, will have a secure inheritance when we both pass away. Story 5. About 6 times a year, someone uses the term husband, and you feel good about it. Other than that, I have nothing. Story 6. Many people comment about partnership and commitment to your wife. While these things are important, you could technically do them without marriage. To address your question directly, being legally married allows someone else to act on your behalf in certain situations. For example, if you work a lot and cannot make a doctor's appointment or go to the bank, your wife can handle those tasks more easily than a girlfriend. The same applies in reverse, but your question focused on what the man gains. If you have children, processes become more streamlined. Taxes can also be simpler. Additionally, if one spouse dies, assets typically transfer to the other without complex legal issues. Some aspects depend on how you manage finances. My wife and I combine all property and finances, but we each have separate accounts with a budgeted amount. Our main finances and insurance are shared. If I am busy and need help with arrangements, she can call and has full authority to manage whatever is necessary. After 15 years, we have never fought about money. There have been plenty of other disagreements, but money matters can be simple when there is trust and full transparency. While it may be possible to achieve some of these benefits without marriage, they are generally the default features of being married. Story 7. The ability to make decisions for your spouse should they be incapacitated. It is unreasonable, but if you are not married, they would listen to their estranged 90-year-old mother before you. You would not have to testify against your spouse. That is about all I can think of. Story 8. Summing up this thread, the only real advantages that cannot be gained in other ways are financial, judicial, and a few societal based on expectations. Story 9. Never get anything unless he is married? Just some of the legal issues, but people have already mentioned that you could enter a civil contract and receive most of the same benefits. Aside from that, nothing. You can literally get everything else by just having a relationship. Story 10. Statistically, married men have more frequent sexual activity than single men. However, it is not always necessarily with their spouse. Story 11. A large dowry of goats and camels and a selection of jewels if the wife comes from nobility, perhaps a plot of land with serfs and a title that would allow making arbitrary laws. Story 12. Pretty much the only thing, and this applies to either gender, is that you become family in the eyes of the law. So if one of you ends up in the emergency room or is otherwise hospitalized, the other can access them and make medical decisions on their behalf. You may receive a small tax benefit, but it is not enough to be a strong incentive unless one person earns significantly more than the other. You might also get slightly cheaper insurance rates. That is all I can think of. Story 13. Technically, the only tangible advantage is insurance benefits. Your spouse can make decisions for you if you are incapable, but that may not necessarily be an advantage. Other than that, there is nothing. Story 14. The real advantage of marriage is that it is fundamentally a set of legal documents that are harder and more expensive to obtain individually. Everything else can be achieved without actually getting married, although it may be more difficult. Story 15. A partner to build with. For your information, most people saying marriages are horrible and will fail are not considering the full picture. Statistics show that most marriages that fail involve people facing financial difficulties. Money is the #1 cause of divorce. Average income of divorced individuals: men, $55,000 to $60,000. Women, $35,000 to $40,000. Making less than $100,000 as a household increases the likelihood of stress. On the other hand, a man or woman who is the sole provider making over $100,000 but has a partner who brings in no income may experience resentment during disagreements over money. Marriage is not for everyone, but if you want it, you can always make it work. Story 16. A famous example specific to Germany relates to taxes. When two people marry in Germany, they can choose which one is assigned to tax class 5 and which one to tax class 3. By placing the higher income earner in the lower tax class, the couple can increase their combined net income through marriage. Story 17. If your wife is in the hospital and unconscious, you are considered the next of kin by the hospital and will be able to speak with the doctors and make decisions. Without an advance directive or other document explicitly giving you authority, your girlfriend's family will be the next of kin and will be the ones speaking with the medical team and making medical decisions. Story 18. Even for a loving couple, some jurisdictions do not allow a non-family member to visit a hospital. Story 19. My wife makes my life better in every way I can think of. I would not have it any other way. I love coming home and sitting on the couch and talking with her. Story 20. When you make the right choice, you find peace of mind, unlike all the hustle and mind games that come with dating. Story 21. There are many legal benefits. For example, in the United States, Social Security survivor benefits, typically lower overall net tax rates, and Fifth Amendment protection applies to oneself and spouse, but not to unmarried couples. There are many more, but these are just a few that come to mind. There are about 100 legal benefits in total. Many of these could be established by contract law if the party so desired, but many could not, such as marital tax rates and Social Security survivor benefits. Therefore, there are probably between 20 and 100 legal advantages that cannot be achieved through a civil contract agreement alone. Divorce, family law, estate, and other attorneys could likely list many of these advantages and benefits. Story 22. I guess putting all the benefits of having a good partner aside, one thing is for sure. If you are in the United States, there is a higher deduction for income tax filing. Story 23. You should specify a good, healthy marriage because, for men in bad marriages, the only unique outcome is heartache and having their life absolutely ruined in ways they never imagined possible. In a genuinely good marriage to a good woman, without considering children, you experience a level of intimacy and companionship that comes from building a life together with someone who genuinely cares and supports you, who also pushes and encourages you to become the best version of yourself. This relationship gives you drive and a new sense of purpose to do your best for someone who is appreciative and supportive of all you do. Story 24. It really seems to come down to the person you marry, but all the benefits, if any, can be gained in other ways that do not involve marriage. It seems like men do not have anything to gain from getting married in the Western world. Story 25. Adoption of children and foster care is very difficult to get approved as an unmarried man. I do not know if never is the right word, but you most likely will not get approval to foster children as a single unmarried man. Story 26. The biggest benefit is the reduction in taxes. If she works as well, that helps with paying for everything and maintaining the lifestyle. Beyond that, there really is nothing else, and there are many downsides. Story 27. In the United States of America, a single man will never receive this benefit unless he is married. There is a higher allowance for the untaxed sale of a home. Story 28. If you live in the United States, there are significant tax benefits to being legally married. I know that in my state, if you are a single man making $19 per hour or more, you have to pay taxes every year instead of receiving a tax return. However, once you get married and file jointly, you can make significantly more money and still receive a tax return instead of owing taxes. Story 29. Never thought of it in terms of benefits. You marry the woman you aim to spend your life with and maybe build a family. Saying benefit sounds a bit manipulative. It is not like we are lords or something trying to acquire land. Story 30. It is a very simple and socially respected way to designate next of kin. This is the only significant benefit I see to marriage. Homophobic estranged family making medical decisions for a gay person who was incapacitated or taking over the funeral when they died was a common subject brought up by promoters of marriage equality. Stories of not allowing close friends to attend the funeral or inherit property were not unusual. As someone who is estranged from my family over religious differences, I can definitely relate to not wanting blood family to take precedence over chosen family in scenarios like that. Story 31. Familial connections through marriage to the daughter, niece, cousin, or granddaughter of a family can be helpful. Story 32. Social legitimacy for your children, together with a hopefully stable nuclear family structure around them as they grow up. However, that is not a guarantee. We have all seen couples where the children would probably be better off if the parents divorced. Overall, being raised in a stable two-parent household with a mother and father who are married to each other and actively present in child-rearing is a verified positive predictor of children growing up to become successful adults. Story 33. Is getting married a good idea is not an answerable question. Should I marry him or her is? I am glad I was never married until I married my now wife, who is everything I need and more. It is not about having a wife. It is about having the spouse that is the right partner for you. All the time I tell her thank you for being my partner, and I mean it. Story 34. Less loneliness. More companionship. A life partner. Someone to double joy and have the grief we experience. Story 35. Two are better than one in almost every way. Pick your partner wisely and improve yourself every day so you can be the best version of yourself and for your partner. If you do that well, here are some extra benefits of having a partner. Companionship, someone to talk to who is always in your corner, someone who has your back, and someone to share your deepest secrets with. Most of this takes years or decades to achieve, so be patient, stay committed, and have fun. Story 36. Married men can have lower taxes and cheaper auto insurance. It is unclear if this applies worldwide. Story 37. If I am to take the question fully seriously, the only thing I can think of is having a family and raising children with your spouse or their mother. However, whether that is a benefit is debatable. Many people desire that, but many have no interest in having children at all, so I cannot assert it is a benefit for everyone. If it is something you want, it feels difficult to achieve otherwise. Sure, you can father children with anyone, but without being married, your rights to custody and spending time with them are largely dependent on the mother. You could technically live with someone and have children without getting married, so marriage is not strictly required, but it is typical. That said, marriage is a human tradition without much objective reasoning behind it, so it is fair to present a benefit that only makes sense in the context of that tradition. Story 38. Marriage can bring a lot of stability and support for a man. From my experience, having a partner means sharing responsibilities and having someone who truly knows you and supports you. It is not just about romance, but also about teamwork in life. Whether it is handling finances, making important decisions, or having someone to talk to after a difficult day. Marriage can also encourage personal growth. For example, I have noticed that being married made me more patient and thoughtful, because you have to consider another person's feelings and needs every day. It is not perfect, but it can be rewarding if both people make the effort. Story 39. Family life is wonderful. Our children are having children, and we just spent a very fun and loving weekend together. We do not need a marriage certificate for that, but we definitely needed the commitment to reach our 30th anniversary. Story 40. I would say that with modern-day marriage, there is not much advantage. But it used to be that when you married someone, you knew they were with you until the end. You could trust that they would always have your back and that they would never leave you hanging. It was you two against the world. With just dating someone, they could leave at any moment without notice. However, I guess marriage is the same for many people nowadays. Story 41. I think everyone should have announced whether they were married or not for a better perspective on people living it versus people theorizing it. Story 42. The biggest advantage for me was getting married at 24, which put me ahead and set me up for a more mature adulthood. Now at 34, my home is almost paid off, I have 2 kids, and most of my friends have very little to show for the last 10 years of their lives. It is not exclusive to marriage, but marriage can create a maturity that most cannot develop on their own. Nothing can teach you that life is not about you quite like marriage. Story 43. If you play your cards right, she will be there when you are at your worst and best, and she will know everything about you down to the embarrassing details. It is a relationship that becomes a part of you. This is not entirely just for men, but the perk is not being alone with a woman or man who loves you for who you are, recognized by the government and whatever greater power you do or do not believe in. It is not, what can I get out of this? It is, what a beautiful thing that I get to share my time here with them. I love, and see the pitchforks coming out already. Sure, the experience is not exclusive to men, nor am I invalidating any partners who were never married, but from what I know, it is sharing something bigger than yourself. Story 44. Well, find a good wife and the benefits are great. The traditional way of courtship still works very well. I met my wife in 3rd grade at our small rural school. We were friends through the years, dated our senior high school year and into college. I knew her and her family well, and she knew mine, both farming families in our community. I knew she would make a great, faithful, supportive, loving, hardworking spouse, and she knew the same about me. Tax breaks, healthcare, stable home life, and a higher level of commitment. Sex is much easier to get, and since we know each other's bodies so well, it is very satisfying. Children and their legal status as dependents, legal partnerships such as home businesses and benefits of female ownership of companies. Story 45. There are some tax advantages, and a spouse can make medical decisions for you if you are unable. However, there must be a legal way to grant that authority to anyone. Story 46. It is really difficult to read the various "there are none" posts without thinking that those men do not see women as people, but as objects that can say no. Like Jesus Christ, dudes, how awful are you at picking partners that is your opinion? At any rate, once you remove the emotional connections, as you can have those without a piece of paper, social legitimacy for your relationship varies in importance depending on where you are. If you are in a large city, it probably does not mean much. If you are in a place with under 100,000 people, especially if you are in a job that relies on your reputation, it means quite a bit. An accountant, lawyer, business professional, business owner, and so on are viewed differently and as better men when they are in a 5-year marriage over a 15-year relationship. Dating someone for 7 or more years without a good reason to postpone marriage is a negative to your social standing. This does not mean anything in Chicago, but it means everything in Lee's Summit, Missouri. The medical aspect has been mentioned, and it is hard to explain to some 20-somethings in good health. It means a lot when you are in your 40s and confronting an important health issue or needing someone to make decisions for you because you are incapacitated. Shared ownership of property is also important. Here is someone who can make legal decisions regarding your shared land, house, cars, and so on. If you are a 20-something renting, this probably does not mean much. If you are in your 40s dealing with a new roof, insurance claim, or needing someone to cover for you, it means a lot. Retirement funds and death benefits also require marriage. Many retirement benefits transfer to the spouse. Neither partner has to worry about relatives laying claim to the property. The other inherits it by default. And then there are taxes, of course. Many of these things, although not all, can be addressed with legal documents signed by both partners and a lawyer drawing them up for a couple $100s. These documents can also be contested in court by siblings or cousins if a partner dies, or if they are no longer capable of making decisions. Marriages are much harder to contest. It is not impossible. There is the famous case of Anna Nicole Smith, but most of the time, the spouse wins when someone dies. If you are a 20-something not thinking more than a decade into the future, think of women as something to have sex with rather than another person, are incapable of believing anything bad could happen to you, and think you will live forever or know you have poor taste in partners, marriage is probably not the best idea for you. Story 47. In modern times in America, There are only emotional reasons for a man to get married, no logical reasons. At its core, marriage is a contract. There are other types of contracts with more favorable or equal terms for men that serve the same purpose as marriage. Story 48. Nothing significant in the material sense, but many studies show that men who marry do better financially in the long run, report higher levels of happiness, and tend to live longer. Regarding the things we consciously seek in relationships, marriage is not necessary. As another commenter said, you can have children, love, intimacy, and companionship without marriage. The incentives are no longer strong for either side unless you are a true lover. Story 49. Well, my clan now has a steadfast alliance with my wife's clan, ending centuries of feuding. Marriage is not about advantages or benefits. I do not view it that way. I did not get married for tax breaks or legal benefits, although those are nice. I got married because I love my wife and wanted to commit solely and entirely to her and the life we are building together. That is enough of a benefit in its own right. You do not have to get legally married to commit to someone like this, but the ceremony is an outward way to show this to both your partner and all the other people in your life. Story 50. It would be cheaper to hire a part-time personal assistant and an escort. Marriage and divorce are financial time bombs that can destroy your life if they explode. It is not worth it from that standpoint. Story 51. As a man who has been happily married for over 25 years, let me tell you, none. There are none at all. Do not do it. Story 52. A new spousal system integrates the following into a man's life. Overclocked anxiety quantum coprocessor with 768 units of RAM. Infinite fault log storage. Instant pain recall interrupts with detailed error reporting utilizing the nuanced enunciation generator, also known as NAG. Dr. Strange level of options for 1 + 1 = 2. Expense control memory is 3 bytes. You may be surprised all of this comes standard, but with this special offer it will be a double standard. Story 53. There is a strong Rollo Tomasi and Andrew Tate influence in some of the comments here. Anyway, mostly just technical convenience. The law as it stands simply makes it easier to navigate expense and legal complications if you are married and one of you dies or becomes critically ill. You can, of course, take steps to eliminate those, but I feel like most people do not bother. Which, in my opinion, is just as unwise as married couples who do the old people everything is in my name approach. Yes, that is great, Dad, until you die and I am helping Mom out with a bunch of probate issues. Story 54. Emotional. Knowing that he and the love of his life have consented to a relationship that is both legally and emotionally representative of the utmost commitment to each other. Legal. Visitation rights, power of attorney, and consent over medical decisions. Having the ability to protect the needs, wants, and participation in your partner's most important medical decisions. Story 55. There are a few benefits in general for men in a marriage, but there are ways to get some comparable perks through other legal means. Estate planning. Not an exclusive benefit, but by default, your assets are transferred to your spouse unless you have wills drawn up. Taxes. If you are American, depending on your income, you could get a break on taxes. Otherwise, being able to file jointly is convenient. Health insurance and Social Security. Another American benefit. Your spouse can be on your employer-provided health plan and can collect benefits. Power of attorney. Your spouse can make important decisions, typically medical, for you if you are unable to do so yourself. Social status. Regardless of how you feel about it, being married changes your social status. What that may mean will depend on the culture. Immigration. It is typically easier to move to another country as a married couple. Countries want productive families to move to their country. Being married can give you an edge over an unmarried couple, regardless of your stance on children. Adoption. Similar to emigrating, being a married couple helps, especially if it is a same-sex couple. I find that most men fear how vulnerable they are in divorces in terms of asset distribution and custody, which is a problem that needs to be addressed. A simple solution is a prenuptial or even postnuptial agreement. If your spouse has an issue with it, that is a significant red flag from the start. Story 56. Marriage, specifically, nothing. If you were asking about the advantages of being in an excellent committed relationship, that is a different question, but those advantages are not connected to marriage only. Story 57. I genuinely do not know how to answer this question. Not because I cannot find any advantages, but because there are only a few advantages to not being with my wife, and each of those are shallow reasons that I immediately counter in my head. I have been with my wife for so long and been through so much with her that she is literally my other half, and I could not imagine life without her. Yes, I tell her that regularly. Finding the right partner is only part of the challenge. Being the right partner is equally difficult. Story 58. You do not have to explicitly state that everything will go to your spouse in a will. You can simply pass away, and everything will belong to her. Story 59. I worked at a hotel and met very successful people all the time. One man was a lawyer for a company. He was very successful and very smart. In the parking lot, there was a very expensive car. I said that you don't see those too often and that it would be cool to have one. He told me the 3 worst mistakes he ever made were buying a Ferrari, getting married, and then getting married again. He said he would rather buy a Ferrari than get married again. Story 60. This comment section is full of bitter stereotypes about what being married to a woman is like. Yes, sometimes these stereotypes are true, but I was not expecting so much negativity from this subreddit. Story 61. I do not know. What are the advantages of running a business that you could never get unless you run one? What are the advantages of healthy eating that you could never get unless you ate healthily? What are the advantages of following the law that you could never get without following it? What are the advantages of formal education that you could never get without it? What are the advantages of being highly attractive that you could never get while being average looking? Advantages rarely come in such absolute terms. It is usually about the likelihood of desirable outcomes, not their certainty. Story 62. I am married to my best friend and companion, someone who cares for you and your children. Granted, you can get some of that from your regular friends. If you find a good woman, you get all of it. Marriage is a high-risk, high-reward game. Choose well. Story 63. There is nothing that can be gained by marrying that cannot be obtained by other means. However, marriage is by far the most reliable way for a man to live a longer, happier life. Contrary to what internet critics say, married men have far more sexual activity than single men. I am a 39-year-old father who has sex more often than most highly attractive 20-year-old single men. As long as you do not choose a poor partner, being married is better than being single. If you choose a poor partner, that responsibility lies with you for making a poor choice. Story 64. Some people will never understand the point of marriage, and that is okay. Some people actually get married and still do not understand, and that is okay. Some people do understand it, and I am here to tell you that it is indescribably okay. Story 65. Never is a strong word. You are talking about billions of people. There will be deviations in the benefits or downsides individuals get from marriage. Generally speaking, married men have better physical and mental health, are more financially stable, and report feeling happier and more satisfied with their lives. Story 66. Typically, men have shorter lifespans than women, although it is unclear if this differs for married men, as they usually live longer than single men. If married to a woman, you generally have someone who will survive you. This means you are less likely to die alone and have companionship in a care home. Ultimately, it is more important to have a happy life with or without someone, and to have less paperwork when nearing the end of life. Story 67. You get an unconditional ally. Even when you are in the wrong, her empathy for you cushions the blows. Over time, you learn her perspective enough to gain a more rounded view of the world. You become members of the world's most exclusive club, just the two of you, supporting each other's successes and consoling failures. There is no closer bond. Story 68. Half his belongings stolen. Oh wait. There is no advantage for a man to be married. Spare me that meaningless tax incentive claim. Story 69. This is cheesy but a best friend and partner for life. Someone you can be 100% honest with, dive into silly hobbies with, and take life steps with. Story 70. I always say it is easier together than alone. Having someone who unconditionally loves and supports you is one of the most beautiful aspects of married life. Story 71. I cannot think of anything meaningful after being married for about 8 years. At this point, I am a bit too jaded to recommend marriage to anyone unless they both want to start a family. You are putting a lot of faith in that person being someone you will still like, and that they will still like you. Story 72. It is a deal breaker for some people. The advantage is that you do not get dumped by the person you love. Story 73. In my case, I think my wife would have left me or moved on if we had not gotten married. So, I have an amazing woman to love, companionship, laughter, a lifetime of home-cooked meals, intimacy, and affection. Story 74. Love of a special person until you die. They may take care of you if you become ill. Financial partnership. Story 75. I guess the same question applies to everyone. There is nothing that is impossible to achieve outside of marriage, apart from legal benefits such as tax breaks. Story 76. A small family of children and grandchildren growing up in a stable and loving environment so that when he is an old man, he can take a beautiful photo of all his descendants who love him and will care for him in his final days. Story 77. This comment section is depressing. I would say companionship and partnership. Somebody to share the highs and lows of life, a shoulder to rest on. Someone you can invest your energy into and who will do the same. There are many reasons to be married. Story 78. Marriage provides a stable framework in which to raise children. Also, aggressively refusing to provide context does not encourage others to respond to you. Story 79. Definitely a question that varies by relevant legal codes, countries, states, even counties. However, tax incentives for marriage are a major consideration and talking point over secular marriage issues. Legal representation issues are also important, including when a spouse is incapacitated in some way. Associated with that is the handling of a person's estate after death without a proper will, which is often quite messy whether married or not. Story 80. A certain kind of recognition from other men. Basically, what Alec Baldwin said in The Departed is true. Story 81. Are you asking specifically about marriage exclusively, like the advantages married couples have that common law couples do not? Or are you asking about the advantages a man receives from having a long-term partner in his life compared to single men? The advantages of having a loving, stable partner in your life are too numerous to list. My wife makes my life better in every way that matters. Story 82. 2 words. Prenuptial agreement. No signature, no marriage. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Do not want to sign? No problem. We can stay engaged for as long as you want. Story 83. For all of you who are saying men get no tangible benefits from marriage, married men literally live longer. Married men are typically wealthier than their unmarried counterparts. Married men are statistically happier than their unmarried counterparts. Story 84. Part of the problem with current society is that neither men nor women can get anything from each other that they cannot get elsewhere. Story 85. Absolutely no advantage outweighs the risk. A good bartender to listen, a $75 a week maid to come by once a week to clean, and a friends with benefits partner that comes by twice a week is enough to satisfy any relationship needs I have. Yes, I was married for 24 years. Nothing she did in those 24 years was enough to make her cheating on me and leaving okay. Karma got her. 14 years post-divorce. I am retired. She is a waitress. Story 86. Legal protection from subpoenaed incrimination and taxes is the primary concern. The rest is a choice between 2 individuals. Story 87. Why do you need advantages? Have you dated someone for a while that you want to spend the rest of your life with? That's all it is. That person should be making your life better from day one. Get into a real relationship that isn't a transaction. Story 88. Sadly, I think marriage in the United States will become a thing of the past for us, given how outrageous dating standards are for women. It is not looking good for men in the United States. Story 89. Last time I spoke on this subject earlier today, the Wife Guy Brigade criticized me severely, so I will keep my peace. You all have fun. Story 90. Women may disagree with this, but if you make enough money to actually benefit from tax breaks for being married, women typically cost more money than any amount of tax breaks the government provides, unless the woman has the higher income. Here is an example of expenses in 1 year with a woman. 1. Wedding ring, $7,000. 2. Wedding band, $2,000. 3. Clothes, $2,000. 4. Women-specific healthcare and health products, $400. 5. Dates, assuming one $50 date per month, which is a very low estimate, $600. 6. Birthday presents. 7. Valentine's Day presents. Vacations. 9. Her family expenses. The average salary of a woman in the United States is $52,850. My wife is worth every expense because you cannot put a price on joy. However, she is not exactly a money-saving aspect of my life. Story 91. Let me answer this from a Catholic perspective and probably from most Christian and Jewish perspectives as well. When you marry someone, you make a covenant between you and God. This is radically different from a contract like a marriage license. For this discussion, I will assume both the man and the woman fully understand that and live their faith. They are also open to having children, which happens in many marriages. With this, you have what is by far the most fulfilling life. The difference here is that a couple could do all this without marriage, but that is just a piece of paper and is treated as such by many people. Hence, questions like yours come up. A man who is married to a good woman, has children, then grandchildren, and grows old with his wife will be far more fulfilled than a man who just hooked up with a woman, had kids, and those kids had kids. One would even have to question what type of woman would be okay with that to begin with, and what type of man would as well. There is no real bond keeping them together. No covenant. That is the difference. Also, I do not expect most readers to agree or understand. That is fine. You live your life then. Story 92. Having all of his free time planned out. Someone to come up with things he needs to do. Someone to complain about all the things he does, wears, buys, eats, and drinks. Someone to spend his money on things he does not want. 50 extra pillows on the bed he cannot use. Towels he cannot use. I could go on, but I do not want to think about it anymore. Story 93. There are none in Western countries, and that is the sad reality. Family courts, marriage laws, and toxic feminism have destroyed any real reason to get married. There is simply too much risk. Story 94. I guess this is a matter of national laws and cultural attitudes towards marriage, but at least in many modern industrialized countries, the trend indicates that there are no substantial advantages at all. I think it is pretty clear that there is some social and religious approval associated with it, though. However, even those do not seem to be all that enticing for people. Story 95. For most men, it is their partner with whom they can be fully themselves and be loved for that. Other relationships, such as parents, children, and friends, are based on conditions. For example, parents love you because you are their child, children love you because you are their parent, and friends are connected because of shared environments or hobbies. However, your partner loves you for your whole self. Cherish them. Story 96. None. It used to be that a man at least got sex, but now it is not guaranteed either. A man can get more sex as a single man than as a married man, so there is nothing in that department. Money? I do not see men marrying for money. Women have an advantage in that area too. Legal benefits? No. Some countries offer tax incentives, but they are not enough. What else? Maybe the superficial happiness of showing off on social media and to neighbors or family that I have a wife and kids now. I cannot think of any male-focused benefits of marriage. Only female-focused. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.